So we've just wrapped up one of the first modules of our AI course, and we're exhausted.
We are exhausted.
Just spent about 6 hours talking about AI.
We have, yes.
And we used AI to write a course about AI that's now going to be edited in part by AI, probably graded by AI.
Probably.
And then, yeah, we covered some interesting stuff though.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for me, there was some real scary facts. I think some of the stats we went through were really scary around the lack of direction with people implementing it. And I think as well, what really scared me was when we were talking about AI-led enterprises. The thought of an AI running a business in 2-3 years time, that's scary.
Yeah. So I heard
Massively.
that. Yeah, that story I love. I heard that from Siam Kidd, who's a guy that I followed. He's a British guy, entrepreneur, big in the crypto space. But he talked about this recently at a seminar, and he just said what he's going to do is he's going to get a couple of different agentic AIs.
Yeah.
And when text to action kicks in, he's going to get them to basically compete against each other to set up businesses. So he'll say to one of them, can you set up a business? It's got to be legal. I'm going to give you X amount of pounds of startup capital.
Yeah.
And I want you to come back to me with your first £100,000 kind of business plan. And he'll just get them all to compete with each other.
Yeah.
And like, that's frightening because then it just gets to the point where you've got AIs competing against AIs to do business.
Yeah.
They're able to then go and launch the websites. They're able to then go and source the products, talk to the customers. And it just becomes a war against who can prompt AI as the best.
Yeah, it is. And I think as well, like when you start thinking about that, obviously there's a whole bunch of films that have been out when AI has taken over the world. And there's going to be a lot of people out there thinking about, well, if an AI is running a business, like surely it will do the same. But I think there can be a lot of value in it. But also it's a scary thought that pretty much anyone will be able to start a business with no real understanding of how businesses work.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of value, but I'm still very much of the mindset whilst that AI can bring so much value to us and it can do pretty much anything, I still don't think it should do everything.
Do you think that people said the same thing about the internet though? When kind of the .com bubble was kicking in and internet was gonna, it was going to change the world, and it obviously did, but do you think people had the same kind of panic and then realized, oh, it's another tool that, like, don't get me wrong, it changed the world, but it didn't stop people from needing to use it properly. Do you not think AI is going to be the same? People still need to know how to use it. People still need to choose to use it.
Yeah. And I think, so for me, there's two parts to AI. You have the part where you still make the decision, and then you have AI that makes decisions for you. And that's the scary bit. Self-driving cars, which makes a calculated decision about whether to hit a person or another car, that's scary. Having AI that can make decisions over where to invest money and which business model to follow, that's scary. I think that's where it becomes really interesting. And, we've seen lots of people share about these amazing facts where IBM Watson, I think it was supposed to revolutionize cancer treatment. Like there was this IBM Watson put into oncology. When they actually tested it in practice, it didn't work. And they just quietly scaled it down without really talking about why.
Yeah.
Now, that could have gone horrifically wrong because actually it could have had a really bad impact. So I think when it's making decisions, it's great. But what I hope to see is that there is guardrails in place for when it makes the incorrect decisions.
Yeah. What's the most entertaining way you've used ChatGPT so far?
Well, there's the obvious one that's big trend right now, which is the Barbie little images.
Yeah.
That was quite fun.
AI Barbie.
There's a couple of those. It was frustrating as well because you ask it to change one thing and it would then change something else and you get really frustrated with it. So that was fun. Other entertaining things. I've used it for some really obvious helping me structure my day or being like, okay, I want to go out for the day. I don't really know what to do. Here's my parameters of what the day needs to look like. What would you suggest? That's been useful.
That's not very good though, because I tried to use that for give me a restaurant suggestion in London. There's a few people on Instagram where they'll talk to real foodies and they'll go like, oh, where's your best like steak? Where's your best bakery? and they like reel off these really cool places, and you think like that's real insider knowledge.
Yeah.
Whereas when you ask ChatGPT like, oh, I'm in Holborn, can you suggest somewhere to go out for dinner with colleagues? It just looks at like Yelp and places, and you're like, that's a rubbish place to go, and
it doesn't
you know,
give you
it's
the
like
real.
you want real, So I don't think that's quite there yet. I did use it though for I had 3 meals over the weekend.
Yeah.
This was probably one of my favorites actually, because so I had a kind of a date night home with my wife on the Friday. I think we had friends over for dinner on the Saturday, and then we had kind of a kids thing on the Sunday.
Yeah.
And I was sat outside Asda in the car, and I literally explained, I actually spoke to ChatGPT and said, I've got this tonight, I've got this tomorrow, this is Sunday. Can you suggest some meals and then ingredients and so on? And it was absolutely unbelievable. And it was like, oh, Ben, it sounds great. It's like, well done you for doing day night with your wife. Like, I'd recommend you do like, a slow cooked, pulled pork thing. And then the kids will love this. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. I was like, yes. And then it gave me the ingredients. And I was like, can you think about what order the ingredients would be in as I walk around Asda? So it was like, yeah, the fresh produce is going to be first. And then you want to go and so it was just a dream. So I was like the ultimate dad walking through Asda with a shopping list, but not one that I'd scribbled together, one that
like
AI...
a spring in your step, like I know exactly what I'm doing. I've got it all under control.
It was absolutely unbelievable. And then I got home, and then I was able to ask it. I was like, right, I now need to start cooking. What should I do first? And it was amazing. I felt like the ultimate superhero dad and husband when I went home with my bags load of shopping. But
so here's a question then. If you have used it for that, do you think we're in danger of, because ultimately it's doing your thinking for you and your processing and all the logic behind it.
You're saying that like it's a bad thing.
Could it become a bad thing though? If we stop thinking for ourselves, where does that leave us? Like, we know if we don't practice something enough, ultimately you forget how to do it.
Yeah.
So where does that leave us? If we
point.
stop thinking for ourselves now with stuff like that, everyday items, what does that mean for our future?
Well, I think it alleviates some of the... There's 2 parts to it. I think it alleviates some of the lower... I'm going to say like lower skilled. It's not quite the right word, but perhaps the lower intensity thought processes that I had to go through in that instance. Like, what ingredients do I need? What order shall I go through Asda to get them in? Mm-hmm. Like, that's not super important. You could maybe argue that if my wife found out, or she did know, that I'd, this romantic date night meal had just been AI generated and I didn't think through it for myself, you might argue that wasn't great and I should have put some more thought in it.
Yeah.
However, I still had to think ahead to think, I want to do a nice meal and I'm going to go, because otherwise I would have just gone on the internet and searched for recipe ideas for a meal in for 2.
Yeah.
So either way, I'm going somewhere to try and get inspiration. I've just taken a massive shortcut by going to AI. And maybe it's the fact that AI or ChatGPT can feel like a person, so it feels like you're just asking someone else to do it for you. Whereas when you go to the internet traditionally, you have to do the hard yards of going through BBC Good Foods and then all the other foodie kind of sites.
Yeah.
You must have got a more entertaining story. You wrote a poem recently.
I did. So I wrote a poem. I'm not sure we can share this just yet because the poem has not yet been put out in the public. So I was asked to do a reading at a wedding, and we couldn't find the right type of poem that they wanted me to read. So I won't share who it is just in case they don't want me to say their name. So I took a load of information. I was like, right. And I basically got it to help me write the poem. And it did still take me quite a while because it was like, what tone of voice are we going with? What language are we using? Right, I like that bit, but not this bit. So there was a lot of iterations. But ultimately, probably after maybe 5-6 hours, I've got a really good personalised poem. And I would probably never be able to write a poem that's that good myself because I'm just not that way inclined. So I think, some of that stuff is great and it is really good fun and it can massively help us. But I still have this massive reservation about where it could take us if we stop doing a lot of stuff ourselves, like the whole thinking behind it. Could I have got there myself? Maybe, if I put enough time into it. And I think this is a really interesting point. And what you've just said is you've got somewhere and it's saved you a whole bunch of time. But if we look at where we were 20 years ago, everything was a lot slower. We just knew things were going to take a lot longer than they used to. And realistically, I think the way society is now, the way technology has come forward, it's put us in such a fast-paced environment that things like well-being suffer. You have this constantly on syndrome because we have mobiles in our pocket. Is AI not making that even worse by giving us shortcuts to different things?
You could argue that it helps you to spend less time using technology because it'll do it quicker for you. But what's been just one more, I think, what's been your favourite way you've used it at work?
Oh, where I've used it at work? Do you know what? Probably where recently, and it's when I was looking at actually our marketing strategy. What do we need to put out there? Where do we need to go? And I had all these different thoughts about what I wanted to put down, but I couldn't almost synthesize. You know, when your head is so full of information, you're like, I know all the stuff I want to say, I just can't put it in a really nice, concise way. So I basically almost wrote like an essay. It was a lot of words. I just almost brain dumped it down. And I was like, this is what I need to achieve and this is where I need to go. What would you suggest? You know, here's a couple of slides that I've got so far. Here's what our overall strategy is and the things we're going after. How can I create my marketing strategy around that? And it helped me put it into a really nice, structured way. So whilst I almost had all of the thinking behind it, I was stuck for how to structure it, and it helped me refine that and then help me build on it. And as with anything, I didn't take its first iteration. I went back and go, yeah, this bit's great. This isn't quite us. This isn't quite right. Let's build on that. So I think for me, that's probably been the most value it's added to me, because I was almost stuck in a cycle of just constantly thinking about the same things. And every day I looked at the same marketing strategy presentation. I was like, I'm not getting anywhere. And I was stuck in that place. So that's probably the most value it's added to me, I'd say.
Yeah.
What about yours?
I am using it for everything, like absolutely anything. I'm now challenging myself to ask, like, how can I use AI, ChatGPT to do this? And I think what's been interesting is there's stuff where before you would default to doing it the manual way, you know, like taking notes from a call with someone, you know, analyzing a PowerPoint, analyzing a PDF, making a plan, looking at data. Like, I'm just like, oh, could I get ChatGPT to do this for me quicker? Sometimes it's not quicker because you've got to learn that maybe it's not quite there yet.
Yeah.
But actually sometimes you're like, oh, wow, this can do this. You know, there's some stuff, particularly with Excel recently, where I was like, I needed to break down a budget, I needed to break down some costs, and I needed to find out how much was left in the budget, you know. And it's like, you do that on Excel traditionally. Yeah. Take you a little while. And I explained the outcome to ChatGPT, and then started to upload some kind of documents, receipts and stuff. And it figured out there were some errors. So I had to kind of prompt it at times and say, oh no, I don't think you got that quite right, because it double counted stuff. But I just think the more you use it, the more you realize how much it can do for you. But I'm using it as much as I can. I think you sometimes feel a bit bad because you feel like you're always trying to find a shortcut. Yeah. But that's part of the process. And I think if you can stay at the forefront of it, you're probably going to uncover the good stuff in the next couple of months and years.
Have you got to the point yet where you've given your ChatGPT a name?
No.
Yes, you need to give it a name.
No.
Yes.
Well, and program it to say
this is your name. Yeah.
So I'm going to call you Mary Poppins.
If that's what you want to call your ChatGPT.
Okay.
Feel free. Mary
Poppins.
I
like the fact that on the ChatGPT app you can talk to it and you can give it different voices.
Yeah.
So you can select the voice that you want, and then you can have real conversations. Yeah. That's pretty good.
Yeah. And then I think my other big thing around it now is, and this is something that I've only recently come to understand, is it was a bit of a people pleaser. So I did find this, it was always very supportive. Like you said, like it was giving you support for thinking about date night with your wife. Like it's very supportive and it's very friendly in the way it talks. But that sometimes means that sometimes you don't need it to be supportive. Sometimes you
want it to challenge you, don't you?
Yeah, you want it to be like, you're not thinking quite right here. You're missing this point.
Don't be so lazy.
This is great. Yeah.
Go and plan your own date night.
And you can now actually program it to do that. So in the back end, you can change its parameters to be like, I need you to be more critical. And, you know, I need you to think more strategically or whatever it is. I need you to take this type of approach. And I think for me, that's been a bit of a game changer because I've definitely been there where I'm like, and even if it keeps getting stuck, have you had it where you've broken it before and it's got stuck on a topic and you're like, no, you're not doing it right. No, you're still not understanding what I say.
It starts to go like a circular loop, doesn't it? It kind of get stuck in a little loop and you have to just start again.
Yeah, and that's where you say to it, okay, no, you're now just stop being supportive and start being critical. And it completely changes like the way it talks to you.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's what you need. So I think being aware of that and being like, what do I need from ChatGPT at this point in time for this specific topic? That for me is a bit of a game changer.
Yeah. So let's just bring it back. We've just finished recording one of the first modules in our AI course, which is really about it's the strategic alignment that's needed within organizations for getting ready to adopt AI.
Yes.
But it's quite tricky, isn't it? Because we know day to day how we're using AI. We can talk about all the funny little stories. And I think that's what most people are actually doing, is they're discovering bottom up how to use AI.
Yeah.
But actually, as the technology progresses, organizations need to think pretty top down in terms of what's the business problem we're trying to solve? What's the opportunity here? How can we use AI to solve that?
Definitely.
So it's a really interesting mindset shift for leaders, because they've got all sorts of people at varying levels using AI to just correct some grammar, or to plan their holidays, or, create images, create videos, create avatar videos, whatever it is. There's all that bottom up stuff, the tooling, but then there's this top down thinking that has to happen as well, which is what we cover in the module.
Yeah, definitely.
So check out the course. We'd love to get your thoughts, and we'd love to know what you guys are using AI for in your day to day. What's your funniest story?
Yes, I'm here for the funny stories.